Hello everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Photo Editor. So, deciding this episode, I'm actually going to consolidate a bit on the gains of the previous episode. I'm actually going to use another one of the pictures that I took at Puffing Billy Steam Railway, where I will be looking at how smoke can be played with a bit more in the editing programs. Now, I'm looking at one here that was a close-up of part of the locomotive's mechanism, and there was quite a lot of steam coming about as they were, I assume, powering up. Now, where I've got my cursor here, it isn't the most exciting image, but from a technical point of view, it's got quite a lot of smoke. Or actually, the one to the right here has a little bit more of a significant cloud. And so we're going to play around a bit, and I'll take a look at the knowledge we have from previous episode, and we'll see how this one turns out. So, beforehand, as always, we check to make sure that our screen brightness is at maximum. And now, right-click, and I'm heading into Silver Efex Pro, edit a copy, to produce the black and white transition. Okay, so we have quite a dramatic cloud here. Black and white really lends itself well to a lot of smoky effects, and that was used in film noir movies to great. If you haven't seen Alfred Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt, you really should. There's a great part where Joseph Cotton arrives in a small West Coast town to the spiritual horror of the community, and there's a steamy steam train that shows his presence well. So going through some of the color filters, the effects are fairly subtle. Now, each filter seems to have minimal effect on the smoke cloud, which is sort of the hero of this image. And so I would like to have as good a contrast as possible from the background. Now, in this case, the blue filter seems to get the carriage surfaces and everything quite dark, which is good. The green and yellow sort of does add an interesting texture. There is a bit of highlighting which could be of interest, but I'm going to stick with solid blue. Oh, I didn't notice the guy's hands in the window there. That's interesting. Well, that's the advantage of photography as opposed to painting. You occasionally find surprises. Okay, now finding a film filter that's suitable. As usual, I look in Fuji Neopen Acros. That tends to be the favorite for my style. I like a bit of soft and smooth grain, but let's see how the others go. Now, one thing to notice with film types is that they simulate different ISO levels. Now, the higher the ISO, the grainier it becomes. If you're just a phone photographer getting into the hobby, you'll know this well, that when it's darker outside, your photos will be grainier. That's because your camera is automatically adjusting the ISO, the sensitivity of the camera sensor to compensate for the lack of light, which causes a graininess. And so for film filters, I'd personally like to go with the lower ISO then to get a smoother look. Sometimes it can work to get a rougher look, like this Ilford Delta 400 Pro, which is the actual film is a very good staple in your film collection. It has quite a good contrast, and because it's a steam train, you don't mind a bit of a drama in the texture. But I think at the moment I'm going to go for the Ilford Pan F50 Plus. and I will leave the grain and intensity of the grain as it is. Alright, save, and then we'll edit in Lightroom. Okay. So I didn't mean to touch the crop function, but while we're at it, I kind of like all the detail in here, so probably if there was a bit of action here happening, like people talking or something, I might clip away some of the platform, but we'll leave it as it is for now. Okay, we established in the previous episode that you want to have for smoke quite a large brush, and so get the drama quite smooth. So, first of all, let's whiten up the white smoke just a little bit and see what happens. Get a bigger brush. Okay, that seems to be kind of just the right whiteness in the main cloud here. Maybe lessen the white just a little bit. Okay, now around the boiler here, because that was a lower level to begin with, we'll try upping it a bit. Okay, so in effect we have two types of smoke here. We have a more intense cloud where you're just seeing the smoke, whereas behind this more spread out cloud you have all the machinery behind you. And so I'm actually going to try reducing the texture a bit on this hero cloud here, but I'll actually be trying to increase some of the texture and clarity around some of the machinery here, but not too much that we lose the effect of the smoke. Okay, so I'm going to adjust more after we've applied the brush. Yeah, so lessening the texture, the smoke is much more smoky. Actually, spreading into the extra clouds here. Okay, so we can see how sort of mesmerizing this extra bit of smoke here is now. And so I'm pretty happy with the cloud as it is there. I'm going to try adding a bit of clarity to the machinery under that extra spread of the smoke. Now we can reduce the brush size a bit now. We're going to work in a bit of finer detail. Start with clarity. Okay, so now you can see already where I'm adding the clarity, some of the dispersal of the smoke is going. That's okay. That's what we want. So I'm increasing the clarity along those studs. Yeah, so photography is a bit of yin and yang. Sometimes you need to increase one to compensate the other, or in reverse. Okay, now along this carriage wall here, we'll add clarity as well, but in a separate brush. Yeah, so we can see where the light is coming in between the carriages. Helps to add a bit of clarity there. It is starting to exaggerate the grain a little too much, although it might work, but just listen a bit, about halfway there. So it's a little more prominent. Now on this, I think that's a step there. thought I refreshed the brush. Anyway, if you're unfamiliar with some of the controls of Lightroom, if you want to sort of create a new brush, and it will actually hold on to the effects you had from the previous setting, and so you will need to double click the effect button, and that refreshes it. And so currently everything's set to neutral, so I'll apply a bit of a brush over the step, and because the settings are on neutral, that won't do anything, but we've already got the brush there around the step now, and I'll see what adjustments I can make. So add a lot of texture and clarity, and that doesn't make that much of a difference. Live and learn. All right, clarity. Let's see, white, adding white. Now, actually behind the training carriage, it's starting to look a little overexposed, so I might actually decrease a bit of the whiteness in that small section there. Not too much. Just to balance it out a little. You don't want to completely remove the whiteness, otherwise it doesn't look very natural. Okay, but it's a little more balanced now. The same way is that I don't want to do too much with a platform, because sometimes taking something away just makes it more noticeable. Now, reflections are interesting. Let's see what happens when we add a bit of clarity here to the window. So we get a more noticeable image. What happens if we up the contrast? It's interesting. Now we almost have a picture within a picture. So leave it at that for now. Let's add some clarity on this front carriage here. Probably don't want to fiddle too much around this painted wording here, because that might affect the smoke cloud. Now this is the great thing that you can do with a lot of industrial subjects like steam trains and factories, is that there's always pieces of metal about and rivets and such details, and you can really add the intensity of whiteness and shine in small parts. So along this step platform here, let's see what we can do. I'm going to get it quite small, because I'm going to try and up the contrast, the texture and the highlight on some of those bolts. Not too much, otherwise it will look like we've just sort of scraped part of the picture up. Create the middle as well. Okay, the timber's starting to look a bit unnatural just because of feathering off from the what we've done to the metal, so I might take that a step back on the wood just to balance it out, because you can sort of get away with harshening metal, but it's more noticeable on timber, which may not be what you want. Got a bit of earth there down on the ground near the rails, so it's nice to bring that out a bit. Actually, let's see if we can add clarity to the dirt. Yeah, so it's actually popping out quite a bit. Now what happens when we put on the timber along the platform, the timber edge? That's, I'm liking that. Brush size a bit too much brush size. Apologies if you're not hearing me well in some of the microphone. I'll try and speak a bit louder. Okay. And some more clarity here along this bit of railing. Okay. Then some highlight and clarity. And we'll handle this bit of a engine. I think it's like a piston cylinder. It's coming out well, so highlight looks good on this sort of Victorian Edwardian age industrial machinery. We were editing on this ridge here before, but I'll just add a bit more. Bad boy. New brush for a new section. Texture. Clarity. So as I remember, these window frames were sort of metal, so should have some similar effects that we were seeing on the machinery. Up that a bit. Yeah, so kind of all over the surface of the picture, there's quite a few interesting details. You have the reflection here of the guards, or could it actually be them inside the carriage? I'm not quite sure. Or it could be them holding a door. That's interesting. We have the different valves and piston cylinders and the rivets along here. And of course there's the smoke which occupies the middle of the frame, the bit of chain. Wonder if I can add a bit of drama to the chain without taking away from the smoke. Okay, starting to see a few too many dots here, so I'll just click done for the second, so we can just see our handiwork without the dots. So the main thing I think now is going to be to reduce the sort of the washing out on this timber here. So you can click on the dots and see over a certain surface what's affecting what region. Okay, so that seems to be the main section here. Is high clarity is causing that bleaching out on the timber. So on that very specific section, I'm going to try and balance out the clarity a bit. And so let's assume a kind of yin and yang approach. I'll try and reverse maybe half of what I put in there. And I might even darken it a little bit, or up the contrast. Lowering shadow. Pretty good. Pretty good. And we still have a bit of ray of light here, which sort of adds to the polished look of the timber. The rivets here are looking a little too overdone in retrospect. Let's see how much. And you've got to be careful also when you've got multiple layers of brushes working on each other. They do add to what you've done in each case, so sometimes you need to be careful of how much you're adding. So maybe right along this ribbon here, I might lessen the white. Right. Looks a bit more natural now. Okay, don't take away too much white. These are all small details, but sometimes success is all the small details that people don't notice and not the major flaw that everyone sees. Okay, reduce the... Probably didn't need to go as far with the rivets before. That's right. To err is human, to forgive is divine, especially in photography. Okay, so overall we have a quite high clarity metal work all over the place, which I like for an industrial subject like this. We are doing a bit of a sort of photography fantasy here. It's not just like a bland photograph you see on the front cover of an old newspaper. Want to add a bit of flair to it. Now, I'll have to export a JPEG for you all to see how it looks finished. So I will be adding my signature, and now what I was almost thinking of cropping out before is actually, I realize now, useful, because we have this space here on the platform where there's a ray of light, and that's actually the perfect place to put my signature. Now, I have the two versions, the black and the white one, so this time I will choose the black version, which should contrast well. So we'll go done, go to the library, I'll just add it to my quick collection of images, so I have my edited images at the ready to look through afterwards. Export. Now I've noticed in some episodes that, earlier episodes, that the final image at the end of the video isn't as good on YouTube as I'd like, and so I'm going to try increasing the resolution even more. So let's name the image. Let's go smoke close-up. Not imaginative, but it'll do the job. Okay. So, what resolution do we want? How would we go with doubling that? So maybe 600 pixels per inch. So we want black left. So that should appear about here, I think. Export. So this might take a moment now. You can see it's doing its work to export it. Almost done. My apologies, I should have had this folder at the ready beforehand, but I hope you'll, not that one. Should be there. Oh yes, of course, I had to export another photo elsewhere recently, so sorry we'll have to repeat that process again. Oh, of course, because I sent it to the photo editor drive. I created a new folder especially for this show. Yes, we'll fix that. Get to. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this image. It's so you can see my image there now exported. Could afford to make it a bit larger, maybe, but I don't want to take away from the picture itself. It's just a bit of customary marketing, and so I am quite happy. It's quite a grainy image. We can see in terms of the reflection, parts of the metal, but that does kind of work for industrial subjects. It will be interesting if I ever try to do a large print of this, how all these effects will look in a closer detail. So I think that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll look forward to doing the next one with you. If you liked what you see, please hit subscribe and tap the bell button to be notified of future contents. YouTube isn't what it used to be when you hit subscribe. You now had to tap the bell button as well to get notified of videos of the channels that you follow. Check out my social media accounts as well. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next program. I hope you have a good day.